We're going to get started. It's after 6. Good evening, everybody. This is a great turnout. This is the local concerns meeting for the Manchester Dorset Grand Rail Shuttle Project, Rail Shuttle Conversion Project. My name is Daniel Peck. I work for BHB, who's a consulting firm hired by the town to do the engineering study for this project. So what we're going to talk about tonight is the project team. Sort of talk briefly about the project. Sure. No. Go ahead. So we'll talk about the project team. We'll go through the project development process. We'll sort of review the corridor and identify any conditions or potential issues. After we look at alternatives for the project, and we'll discuss schedule and next steps for the study moving forward. And then following the presentation, we'll ask for public input, questions, concerns you all may have about the project. So if you could bear and hold all your questions or comments till the end of the presentation, that would be great. Otherwise, we can it's going to be difficult for us to keep track of all the questions that we need to document as we look forward to analyze alternatives. So as I mentioned, the project team is Town of Manchester, who is the administrator of the project. They received a federal grant to do a feasibility study, to study the corridor for the trail. John O'Keefe is the town manager, obviously. Again, I'm Daniel Peck from BHB, we're the design consultants for the project. Vermont Agency of Transportation is also involved. Since there is federal dollars involved, they are required to do federal oversight. Peter Pochak from V-Trans is the MAB, which is the Municipal Assistance Bureau supervisor for the project. So he ensures that the money is being spent properly and that we're following the protocol. And he also provides insight to the project. And then also we have Old Railroad LLC, who owns a majority of the property that the proposing to put the path on. And then Jim Sullivan from the Bennington County Regional Planning Commission has been involved for this project for a long time. So he's also providing input as we move forward. So, again, this is part of the Municipal Assistance Bureau that the state runs. It's basically for any project managed by a town. So there's a federal policy, or they have a policy that they must adhere to. It's called the Municipal Assistance Bureau Local Project Guidebook. And right now, we are in the scoping study phase of a project. Basically, what it does is it analyzes feasibility, it quickly dissects if there's issues or environmental and cultural resources affected by the project. And that's what phase we're in right now. If the scoping study finds that the project can move forward, it is feasible. That's when the project can go into preliminary design and eventually final design and into construction. But this is an important step for the project, because this is what allows the town to seek additional funding and grants for construction of the path. So as part of the project schedule, we've had a kickoff meeting, and as required by the MAB guidebook, we are required to have a local concerns meeting, which is why you're all here tonight, is to express your concerns about the project, and we provided any input as we move forward towards the next step, which would be alternatives development. So we would take all your input into consideration moving the project forward. We would assess your input, develop alternatives, and then we'd come back to you for an alternatives presentation meeting, which is scheduled for August of this year. And then hopefully from that meeting, the public would essentially adopt a preferred alternative moving forward for the project. And then we finalize our study for the project, and then we present it to you one more time for you to officially adopt the preferred alternative, and then that can be used for future advancement of the project and the design. So again, a little bit of background. The purpose of this of our study is to identify options and potential impacts and costs associated with the development of the built-use path along this already selected corridor. A feasibility study was done along the corridor in 2000. And it identified this corridor as an opportunity to develop a multi-use trail, a path from the school NEMS to Riley Ring's already been developed. So this study is looking to continue that northerly through the corridor up to North Road, approximately across from the up on North Road. Sorry. So one of the things we're going to look at. So this is the project area again. So you can see beginning at essentially Riley Rink and extending northerly. Intersecting Pig-Peg Road, going through this section of wooded area, through the field. And this is where the MD&G railroad corridor begins for the project, along this red line, up to its intersection with Squires Road. It's approximately 1.6 miles of new multi-use trail. And now I'm just going to sort of walk through some of the things we'll be looking at as we evaluate alternatives and issues moving forward. This is the road along just north of the Riley Rink. You can see by the star and the highlighted picture there as we're looking north. So one of the opportunities here is what will we be doing along this section? Would we just utilize the existing gravel road, or is there an opportunity to do some sort of parallel multi-use trail to keep pedestrians and bicyclists off the gravel road? This is just north of Pigpen Road through the woods. You can see, it's kind of hard to see with this glare from the sun, but one of the things we need to deal with is there's fairly significant grade through here that we'll have to evaluate and how we're going to mitigate that issue. There'll be some tree clearing, obviously, most likely through this section of the trail. And then there's also a private road, private drive intersection that we would need to address as well. And this is a typical section on the MD&G rail corridor project, is this raised bed along the corridor. In some places it's fairly narrow, and there's signs of some erosion, as you can see on this right side here. It's not wide enough to accommodate a multi-use trail per pedestrian or ADA guidelines. So we would need to consider how we would mitigate impacts and resources on the side to widen the path and improve the mobility of pedestrians and bicyclists through this trail section. This is looking along the open field section, just south of the MD&G corridor, right here. This is fairly wide open. This would be, since we're following the existing right-of-way through here, there isn't a lot of opportunity to evaluate alternatives. The bed's fairly set. So most likely this would be really what sort of trail surface course you would like to see through here. Again, through the woods now, we get into this raised railroad bed section here. You see a lot of growth, trees. Some are growing up through the middle of the railroad bed corridor. So obviously, again, we need to look at if we have appropriate width to just put in a multi-use trail, what we'd have to do, what sort of impacts we would be doing to the surrounding area, and obviously some significant tree clearing as well. And this is east of Beading Lane, looking up towards Beading Lane. Again, same thing, just along an existing railroad corridor. So it's fairly well established section, and thanks to some local clearing, the path is already defined somewhat through this section. This is the Beading Lane intersection with the trail. You can see the trail sort of extends this way. We're looking north again. There is an elevation difference between the trail and Beading Lane, so we would need to accommodate that moving forward. We'd also need how to address conflicting pedestrian, bicyclist traffic with the road. Usually that comes in the form of signage and potentially flashing lights depending on the traffic, but that probably would not be the case in this section. Again, a lot of the same. This is through the woods. This is between Beading and Mount Iolas Lane. The corridor is fairly well established. Most likely just be some tree clearing and some more formal surface treatment along the trail. Again, another road crossing. This is Mount Iolas Lane. The trail extends diagonally across. Again, another roadway crossing. And this is northwest of Mount Iolas. This is the current condition of the trail that's out there today, or the informal trail that's out there today, cleared along the existing railroad corridor. Some things we need to consider with the multi-use trail is how are we going to accommodate bikes and pedestrians? How do we handle roadway crossings? There's a couple locations where there are some railroad bridges that have been destroyed or have washed away. So those will obviously be some major concerns for how we establish connectivity of the trail. Obviously, we need to look at cultural and environmental resources of the trail, how it impacts wetlands, river corridors, rare and threatened and endangered species, and obviously right-of-way impacts we would need to investigate as well. And then the cost of the project moving forward. Is it feasible based on the conditions out there? Is it feasible to construct a path? So bike ped accommodations, obviously the big one is what type of surface are you looking for? There's pavement, there's an aggregate surface course. We need to consider alignment and grading, drainage, if there's any culverts that we would need to cross, any utilities, which doesn't seem to be the case for this corridor. Landscaping and screening are things to consider. We know that there are a couple of houses that abut the current corridor right now. And then if there's any features you'd like to highlight along the corridor, wayfinding or stop areas for you to enjoy the surrounding area. So again, these are two common examples. This above is a multi-use gravel or aggregate surface course trail, and then below is a pavement. Asphalt pavement. You can see they're fairly similar. They're about the same width. They're usually 8 to 10 feet wide. Usually have 2-foot gravel shoulders, and they're fairly flat. They have relatively gradual grading on either side. Like I said earlier, alignment and grading is going to be a big issue, particularly in this area. This is the section, the wooded section just north of Pigpen Road. You can see that we're dealing with a very significant grade as the trail comes down this hill and follows it here. So, and we'd have to figure out how to make sure that the trail is, compliant for it's handicap accessible. So that, and we may have to consider, incremental rest areas along the side of the trail to accommodate that situation. There's only a certain grade that we can accommodate. Again, roadway crossings are something we need to consider. These are 2 gravel roads, so really the biggest issue here, we're just bringing the path up to grade to the road and making sure that we have adequate sight distance in all directions so that vehicular traffic and pedestrian traffic can see each other at the intersection, and appropriate signage. This is a culvert that's located between Iolas and Beading Lane. It's a stone culvert. It's an intermittent stream. You can see right now it's just, there's remnants of a stone slab a box culvert, but there's been wood planks thrown on top in order to get across. So we need to address that with if we were to put the path along this section. That can come in the form of a small bridge, as you see here, or we can, and what you can see here is basically probably what was most likely there before it was destroyed, was this, open bottom, stone slab, box culvert, rectangular box culvert with, something with it built above. So options are a small footbridge, or we could just put in a pipe that's appropriately sized based off the size of the stream, and then just fill over the top of it. This is looking up on top of the railroad corridor. This used to be a bridge, and there's a perennial stream down below. There are 2 of these locations on the project corridor. So obviously we'll need to look at how do we connect the path on the other side of this stream. Most likely we require some sort of bridge based on the span and the height of the trail above the stream below. This is the other stream location. You can see remnants of the old bridge. There's timber ties and there's some old stone stone formwork down below. And these are some bridges. This is not what we're proposing. These are just representative examples of a couple of bridge locations along a multi-use trail. This has got steel girder beams with some wooden plank rails above, and this is a wood plank bridge with some wooden truss work. So as part of our evaluation, we'll be looking at the existing conditions out there. That includes a desktop review of the existing conditions, but also requires us to go out in the field and evaluate if any cultural and natural resources would be impacted by this project. I already mentioned rare and threatened endangered species we would look at. Is the corridor within a flood hazard zone or a floodway? Any wetlands or river corridors or streams we would be impacting. As I mentioned, there are 2 perennial streams on the project where those 2 bridges were located, and there's 1 intermittent stream located. So we need to address those. And then a desktop review initially shows that there are some wetlands out there near the stream, so we would need to evaluate those. Most likely it would be someone from our field going out there and flagging those locations for potential impacts. Cultural resources, obviously, if the bridges were still intact at the railroad, those would be considered most likely historic, because almost anything on a railroad corridor is considered historic if it's a structure. But due to their current condition, that's not likely anymore, but we would do an investigation to see if that's still the case, if there's anything that can be preserved or saved with whatever left of the project, with the bridge, sorry. Okay, so now currently we are following this meeting, we will have hopefully take all your input and look to evaluate that and use that to sort of hone in what alternatives we're going to evaluate moving forward. And then we are currently doing an environmental assessment. We'll have people out there shortly to evaluate the cultural and natural resources. So from your input, we'll develop the alternatives. We'll present them again to you in August. Again, that will be another opportunity for you to comment on the alternatives presented, and then hopefully from that meeting you would select a preferred alternative. And then from that we would finalize our report, and that would be submitted to most likely VTrans and the Beading County Regional Planning Commission, and that can be used for future funding if the project were to move forward towards design and construction. So that's the presentation right now. So really this project, this local concern meeting is really just about you to express your concerns about the corridor. If you have any questions, I'll answer them as best I can. But really this is just a input for us to evaluate what alternatives we should evaluate in the next phase of the project.
Okay.
With you,
All right.
and then I will try to answer any questions you have. I'll stay right up.
All right, my name is Cynthia Kilburn, and I'm here to just moderate the meeting. We're here to gather your comments. We want to hear what you have to say. They're taking minutes, so one of the first things you'll need to do is state your name when you speak. You need to raise your hand, you will be recognized, and then if you'll stand up and speak. We hope that there's a lot of people here, a lot of people probably have comments. Try to keep your comments under 4 minutes. I would prefer that I not have to time you, that you're self-moderating. We don't want cross comments. You know, don't argue with someone else here. The idea is that you're presenting information to us. These people can take it away with them. There will be ordinances that are worked out at a later meeting regarding, you know, dogs on the trail, hours of use, that kind of things. So we want to hear what you have to say. So feel free to raise your hands and be recognized. Yes, please stand.
My name is Lee Dykes. We live on Beading Lane. And we're very much impacted by it because the path would go just a stone's throw from our front door. And our grandkids play there with their dog. And if there were strangers coming by, you know, I can't let the kids out there anymore. And even the dog gets very aggressive with other dogs around. So, you know, we love paths. We're walkers ourselves. But there are so many paths already, and to have one impacting our neighborhood like that, our house, you know, very much against it. I can understand people wanting it, but, you know, it's one of these things down in my backyard. And you know, that's my feeling. It's very, very detrimental to our house and our way of life. And that's my comment.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Sir?
Yeah, my name is James Riley. I'm a licensed alcohol and drug counselor, licensed clinical and mental health counselor. Work for United Counseling Service here in Manchester. In the last 3 years, we've developed a biking program as part of the therapeutic services we offer to at-risk youth and traumatized children. And we've used the beginning of the path going from, as we saw, Men's to Riley Rink, and been very excited by the prospect of having the path go through. So I just want people to be aware, hearing both sides. I understand concerns other people have. I myself would find it very valuable for us to be able to have more pathway for youth in our community who are healing to be able to use. So I hope this project can go forward, and I'm supporting it wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Chris Conti. I'm a business owner and landowner in Manchester. My family also is impacted. They live on North Road. I'm very supportive of this program. People keep mentioning there's lots of walking paths in this town. I'm a runner. There are not a lot of walking paths in this town. There's the loop here in the rec center, and the rest are basically, you know, straight up the mountain or straight up Liebrook. My only concern is the presentation. That seems very expensive and unlikely to happen. I'm not sure why we can't just do more of a path, less of a, you know, concrete paved bridge and everything. But very supportive, and I hope it goes well.
Thank you.
Like my wife said, we live on Beading Lane, and it's extremely close to our house. I mean, it's very unnerving to see people walking back and forth. I mean, you almost don't want to live here anymore. We kind of toying our mind whether what we can do. Right now, there's no way of getting to sell our house. And I have a couple questions. You're going to study this from Riley Rink north, but what about the trail south of there? That's sometimes it goes down to 6 inches wide. I mean, that would need work too. Is that involved in the cost? Is that going to be another study? That's one question. Have you read the Berger report, which was 18, 19 years ago, which summarizes that the best interest of the town is not to proceed with the project without the strong support of the whole community? And of the adjoining landowners, everyone is opposed to this. So my question is, would you get grants if everybody along here is opposed to it? That's going to enable the grants to be available. A couple comments I want to make on security. Our police chief said when a pathway is open across a secluded area, it invites criminal activity. I'd like to see that addressed. I don't know what we can do about it. Maybe it should be closed down now. We're doing a study right now. There's no reason to remain open anymore. We don't know these people. These are strangers walking across here. I don't know. I've seen some walk up our driveway. My neighbor has horses. And they go up and look at the horses and come back down. I guess they're harmless, but it's still not their property. It's our property. As I say, my wife said, we're not even comfortable being outside anymore. It's just a terrible thing. And how are we going to keep motorized vehicles? The question's never raised again. As far as our driveway is concerned, I've got to submit a couple photos here that I took last winter when my truck slid off the driveway. No, I would pay someone. The driveway gets full of ice all the time in the winter. And I've had the delivery trucks that can't even come down. They call and say, you'll have to come back another time. As far as the speed is concerned, we know about it. We go slow. With the delivery trucks, you ever see a UPS driver come down there, zoom right straight ahead. And it's really unsafe. As far as the property value is concerned, it's just too close. Rec paths are very valuable if they're far away, you don't see them. If they're right on top of your house, it's very detrimental. That's the property. And I know earlier there was talk about price of this is about $1.5 million. I don't know, this the whole work. It's going to be close, just under $1 million per mile to construct this. Seems extremely expensive. As for and to that, you have to have the maintenance cost. Likely police suite is what I've been told they would do. Security cameras, that should be factored into the cost of this too. And we have 20 miles in my best count of walking trails in Manchester itself. I don't know why we need another 1.7 miles that packs people like this. But, and if that isn't enough, you can just go up 11:30 for 3 or 4 miles and the Appalachian Trail and go from Maine to Georgia. So you really just don't need 1.7 miles. It impacts the neighbors so much. But thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Mary Derlin. I'm a newcomer to the area. And the observations I'm about to make, I don't know whether they're pro or con. I will leave that for you to decide. I have been on the segment of the trail being developed towards my road, and it was a winter day. I'm a naturalist, and I saw that day after light snowfall more tracks of deer and coyote and a couple bunnies and so on than I have seen anywhere since I've been in Manchester. And I haven't walked it to see what the plant life is, but I know what happened to the West River Trail in Brattleboro when it's a rail to trail, and when it got into a bicycle wider trail, the hepaticus disappeared. People found I could pick the columbine off the cliffs, and lo and behold, look at all the fiddleheads you could take. People aren't very well behaved. And my last comment was that I did feel that I was very definitely encroaching when I came to places along the trail. And I thought, I really wouldn't like to have people going back and forth so close. And I guess if it was going to go forward, I would much prefer to see it for, its nature value preserved. Let's preserve the common species that aren't so common, I find, here in Manchester.
Thank you. Patrick?
I'm Patrick Monroe. I'm on Hillvale Drive. I've heard this described as a walking path, a hiking path, a bike path. Do we have any idea what it's going to be? Is it possible to ride a bike all the way up there? Is it going to be paved, not paved? Has anybody had any answers to these things?
It's called a multi-use trail, so it's for pedestrians and bicyclists.
Okay, but if it's loose gravel, you can't ride a bike on that.
It would be very, it would be compact and gravel, and it's very possible to ride against. A lot of multi-use trails are an aggregate surface course.
You have insurance? Because I have a bicycle. I can't ride it on loose gravel.
You couldn't be, I wouldn't recommend riding a road bike on it, but it's acceptable for mountain bikes and fat tire bikes.
Okay. I just, I'm curious. I've heard it described as 6 different things.
Yes, I'm Robin Berner, and obviously I'm very much in favor of the trail. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for families, young families, kids, people after work, I mean, right from downtown to be able to go out and get a couple of miles of exercise. I think it's a valuable asset for the town. It also makes the town more attractive to people from that might be coming here visiting. It would be a tremendous asset. This is a little map that I compiled, and it's entitled Trails the Towns Around Us Have to Offer. And if you look, every town, you can go in any direction you want. If you hit a town of 2,000 or 3,000 people, they have put in a rail trail or a walking trail or a hiking trail. And it doesn't stop here. It's the entire country because it's good for you. It's healthy. Okay, Dorset has a whole bunch of stuff. Rupert has a DNA trail. Pulteney, there's a group up there that's developing the Slate Valley Trail System. It's phenomenal. It's all kinds of trails. Some of it is for bikers only. Some of it is for mixed use with kids and strollers and that sort of thing. Even Springfield, Vermont, if you drive through there, they've developed the trail along the side of the road. It's called the Tunaville Trail. You go through there anytime when the weather is nice. There's always people walking it. Why? Because it feels good. It's good for you. It's healthy. Londonderry has the West River Trail. Bennington has done a bunch of trails. They have the Ninja Trail. They've gotten over $1 million in grants to build their trails. Then they have another one under construction. Rutland has a bunch of opportunities, including a mountain bike system that's fantastic. It's called the Pine Hill Park. People go there from everywhere. So biking is a good, or any kind of outside of activity is a really good thing. And this trail has this, you have to understand, this rail bed has been here since 1903. Anybody whose property abuts this trail would have seen that railroad bed on their deed when they bought it. So to suddenly say, and in some cases the people were told by the zoning administrator that this was going to be a hiking trail. So to suddenly say, oh, we didn't know, it's not exactly right.
Okay, Rob, we just need you to direct your comments to helpful things for,
Okay.
thank you. All right.
I'm Maureen Hill, and I have juvenile macular degeneration, so I had to stop driving when I was about 40, but I can still ride a bike safely and cross-country ski. I live in Manchester Center, so for me to be, and I have a daughter who does sports. She's done swimming, she's playing lacrosse right now over there. So I'm here often, so be able to not only do this mile route, but also continue on up into the woods would be amazing for me, whether I'm on my bike or cross-country skiing in the winter, because I can't drive up to the mountain and ski there. I could just rock my skis over here and have a beautiful ski up in the woods.
Thank you. Bill?
Bill Badger. While I would like to see the rails go back, I guess for someone who drives North Road several times a day, as a bike path, it's dangerous. Getting the bikes off of North Road onto a real bike path is going to be much safer. The person who gets killed.
Thank you.
Can I, just to carry on that,
What's your name, please?
I'm Heather Vernon. We've been in the area for few years now. And
Come on, in the room so they can hear you.
yeah, okay. So I've got 3 kids here, and that safety on roads thing is a big thing for me with my boys. I am not comfortable taking them on the public roads. So this is huge for us, and I would love to see this happen.
Thank you.
Sylvia Jolivet. I'm a citizen of Manchester for over 50 years, and I am hesitant about giving my okay on this particular project. I'm not sure whether or not it's going to be a private project or whether the town is going to take it over. And if the question of whether the town is going to get involved, we have to have an Australian ballot to give approval for this, first and foremost. That was established some time ago when talk of this project first came up. Myself, personally, I think it's an invasion to those people who live on North Road, whose properties were purchased some time ago. Yeah, they knew the rail trail was there, but I don't think the owners, OMIA, wanted to deal with individuals. OMIA wanted to deal with some other group organization. Well, that was unfortunate that these people on North Road didn't have the foresight to maybe establish an association and buy that land when it was very economically able to be purchased. And this kind of thing happens. Lots of times people don't realize the potential of the future and who might take advantage of an opportunity that they should have taken advantage of. But it happens. But it doesn't have to go forward. I think we have plenty of areas to enjoy in terms of bike and walk paths. I'm quite a walker. I used to be quite a biker, and I had no trouble going with a bunch of kids, usually sometimes about 30. They used to meet at my house on Bonnet Street on Saturdays around 8 o'clock in the morning. I was a school teacher at the time, and we took off either for Emerald Lake, that area, or we took off for Dorset and made that loop around.
Sylvia, focus on this project. What
I am saying that there's plenty of opportunity. You just have to be aware. River Road is also a good road to travel if you want to enjoy a bike ride or a walk.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? No comments? No, until everyone has had a chance to speak. Yes,
thank you. I'm Ellen Ogden, and I live in Manchester, and since 2013, I've been part of a group who have been trying to bring some alternatives to the economic vitality of this town, alternatives to shopping, and we have a bike committee that has been responsible for putting in all kinds of things that maybe you've noticed: bike racks, bike signs, bike safety, and I definitely support this trail. I think it would be absolutely the best thing that the town could support as an asset for families and also for economic development in terms of bringing people from out of state here to spend monies on the restaurants and the hotels. And as Robin was saying, all the other towns are doing it, all the other states are doing it, and I just think it's absolutely 100% the right way we should go.
Thank you.
My name is Carol DuPont. I would just like to say, do you have any estimate of how much this is going to cost?
Not initially. The original feasibility study, I believe, was 1.6 million.
That we did recently?
No, in 2000.
2000.
Oh, yeah. I don't know
In
that.
2000. I thought it was closer to...
So part of our study will be to evaluate update costs.
I'm just saying, if the town, if these people feel they have enough money to put into this, then I should think they'd be willing to buy people's homes if they wanted to move. That would be the fair way of doing it.
Yes, sir.
John Thrasher. I represent General Roberts Homestead property. That's the property at the end of North Road that has the big agricultural fields. One of the last large agricultural properties here in town. The owners of that property just have some concerns about how that's going to affect their ability to continue to use the agricultural fields. They'd like the ability to continue to cross wherever needed for agricultural uses. Also have some questions about the actual width of the trail as compared to the width of the right-of-way and how that's going to be maintained. Keeping it open and in active agricultural use would be their preference. Preventing scrub trees from growing up along there, because I'm assuming the path is not going to be as wide as the actual right-of-way that's owned by the LLC that currently owns it, or the town. So those are some of their concerns. Also have concerns about people using their property to access the bike trail from either the North Road, coming across the property to get to the bike path, or leaving the bike path to access the river. It's a nice warm day today. Gonna hop off the bike path, cross the agricultural fields, go down to the river. It's already a gathering spot. Once or twice a year, go out, gather up the beer cans, the litter, everything else. So who's going to be providing security for that and monitoring access? Will there be, how are you going to prevent ATV use on the rail trail? We've heard several mentions of the D&H rail trail. They've had problems with ATV use, people running up and down the trails on ATVs. That trail is leased, it's owned by the Agency of Transportation, it's leased to the Department of Forests and Parks. So they're maintaining that trail. How is the maintenance budget going to be handled for maintaining this? What happens when we have damage like the flood of Irene and the bridges go out, the trails washed away? Well, how is all of that going to be addressed? You mentioned that there would be some ordinances worked on to address the use of this. When will that be happening? Will there be public input put into that? Is this slideshow available online somewhere? And I apologize if some of these questions have been answered. I came in a couple minutes late. But if you could let me know if the slideshow is available online, I'd appreciate it. But those are our thoughts and comments.
Thank you. Katie?
Katie Dillman. I also with Bike Manchester, but I'm also on the board of the Equinox Preserve, which is a public access trail system that's very popular. I myself am a hiker. I'm not much of a cyclist, but this nice flat trail could entice me into getting the old bike out again. Several comments have been about the number of hiking opportunities in the area, and yes, there are many of them. Unfortunately, they have become very overcrowded, including the Equinox Trail system. Parking is a very big problem at most of the trailheads, whether it's to Prospect Rock, Black Brook, or on a long trail up by Bromley. Parking is a very big problem. One of the real pluses for this proposed project is that there are several very accessible and large parking areas at Riley Rink, at the rec center, at the school. And this is not a hiking trail. This is for people who want to jog and aren't looking for a strenuous woods road hike to go uphill. It's very accessible to all levels of athletic ability, which makes it very appealing. It'll be great for small children. And the other thing, looking to the future, Dorset itself is looking at a number of projects. They are very tuned into building some additional pathways and so on into their long-range plans, into their town plan. We learned this recently. And they are very interested in looking and working with us and figuring out how do we work as several towns to combine these efforts and make even more accessible, longer pathways, longer bikeways. So there's a great future for this, and this is but a start to what I think is a very hopeful recreational opportunity.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, I'm Sherry Siegel. I also live in Manchester, and I want to just voice my support for the trail. I regularly travel to other places and spend money on hotels and restaurants because they have good, well-built bike paths and bike lanes, and I enjoy long-distance cycling. When you look at the statistics on economic development effects of having these trail systems, they are profound. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Obviously, this little trail is not going to bring multi-billions of dollars into the area, but it is part of what attracts tourist trade, and that is something that this town has repeatedly said that it is banking on for future development.
Thank you.
My name is Lawrence Kukachka. I live in 98 Beading Lane. The proposed bike path doesn't run on my property, but it runs adjacent to it for about 400 feet. I question the construction costs. I've gone through all of the earlier economic data, and just escalating that, you're up in the order of $1.6 million, something like that. I'm looking at the bridges that you showed in pictures before. They're not going to support the construction vehicles. There are 2 bridges that have to be built, and from the data that I've seen, they propose to build them with 75-foot girders. So you have to have equipment to get 75-foot steel girders into place. The bridge is washed out, so they have to be designed for to handle at least a 100-year flood. We've had those quite often recently. So I think a lot of the maintenance costs are going to be much higher than what is projected. In fact, I've really never seen a detailed estimate of what the construction costs will be. There's only going to be 2 axes to it. One will be from Mount Aeolus and the other will be from Riley Lane. So all of this equipment has to go across those 2 bridges, first to help build the bridges, and then secondly to maintain the path in between. I think the property is going to be very susceptible to washouts. It's got to meet the ADA requirements, which I think would eliminate some of the grades, and will also eliminate some of the potential surfaces. You're not going to ride bikes on pebbles or stones. You're going to have to be able to be wheelchair accessible. So there are just many, many costs, I think, that have been either omitted or grossly underestimated. I certainly don't want construction vehicles coming down Beatty Lane, even though Beatty Lane doesn't intersect the proposed bike path. It's on private property, the dikes and, the dikes, period. And so I think that there are a lot of unanswered questions, and it's going to be more than just a detailed or, perusing of the information. It's going to require some detailed information. Again, in the 2000 study, it talked about the need to do a detailed survey because one of the more expensive costs was going to be excavation costs. So you had to know precisely where you were going to put the right-of-way, or not the right-of-way, the path, before you could come up with a cost estimate that had any reality. So I think a lot of these things have to be looked at, and to be able to do that by August, I think is hopeful, but not necessarily going to be reality.
Thank you. Mary?
Mary Semple, I've lived here 60 some odd years. And I run, walk. I live on Ridgeville Road, and I can tell you it is dangerous. So I come here like every single day to run or to walk on these trails that go around. It's a great trail. They do a really great maintenance. I've never seen anything bad happen. I've come here at night. I've come here during 7 in the morning. Never have a problem. I think the rail trail will be a really nice addition to what we've got. Even walking through town on the sidewalk can be dangerous. I was almost hit the other day. trying to cross the road. So I like this, I can come, I can go, put my earphones in and not have to worry. I do it with a running group, and we train here twice a week. It's definitely would make our lives a little easier, maybe a little different, and I'm hoping it goes forward.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Any other questions?
Back row.
Yes?
Christy Murphy, some of the...
Excuse me, Christy she was just beginning to speak. Christy, go ahead.
Hi, Christy Marcus. I live along the North Road. I'll just quickly go some of our concerns we had addressed before, and now that we've had enough time, we've been able to see other places and see how it's gone for them. So one of our concerns was access to drugs on the trail, and Green Up Day, we found a needle up on our pasture off the North Road, and then only 30 feet from the post trail, the police seized more than 50 pounds of pot. I thought that was interesting. Another concern, hunting season. Nothing is posted. Everybody along that path on both sides allows people to hunt. So that's something you need to address. And that's in the spring and the fall. Wildlife, you did say you would be studying that, and I'd be interested to know what kind of a study that is. You know, how do you study the impact on wildlife? I did take pictures while they were doing all the tours on the trail, and all I saw for that year were people. And then the year they stopped doing all the tours on the trail, this is full of all the wildlife that came back on that trail. And then, let's see, invasive species. For 30 years, I've worked on my property to keep down the honeysuckle and the wild roses and all the stuff they're telling us to get rid of. And in the few years that the trail's been worked on, all of that stuff has grown up on both sides. So that will be something that will have to be addressed with the town if this goes through, is keeping that stuff at bay. Let's see. I feel personally that we've been exploited, because it just feels that this use is really taking advantage of all of us for other people's advantage. And it's really a trail that goes nowhere. It dead ends on the North Road. It's not going to Dorset right now. And I had 3 daughters, and I was always into them doing things outdoors, but I would not want them on that trail. When my daughters came back to visit, they said they wouldn't want to go on that trail by themselves. There's just too many secluded places. And so that would be the security. And how do you stop people from going off the path and going to people's houses? We did have a neighbor already. They were working on the back of their house washing windows, and somebody came around the back and said, oh, I was just wondering what was here. And they said, how can we help you? And it's, where did you come from? And they said, off the path. And they walked to the back of that person's property checking it out. And then the dog's off leash. I went up to Equinox several times, and I took my camera with me, and almost every single time dogs were off leash, and they were under the owner's control. They were either chasing other people's dogs or going up to people. And then again, I've got a whole envelope of photographs of dog crap that's not being picked up. And the thing that really got me was the final, it just really was upsetting that someone did walk down this proposed path, picked up their dog crap, and threw it on my property. It's disrespectful. That's all I have to say.
All right. David?
Hi, my name is David Canal, and I'm fortunate enough to be healthy and lucky enough to get out in the woods and spend a lot of time enjoying this experience. But we've already heard from the younger generation that can maybe address the older generation that can't get out on the Equinox trails and can't do these types of things. And I have a dear friend who did some walks around here, looking so forward to have this available to us. It's an access to nature, it's wildlife, and really looking forward to doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No one else? Okay.
But just a simple comment. The people that are talking about these great trails that are in adjoining towns and all that, yeah, they probably go somewhere. But this is a 1.5 miles that goes from Riley Ring to North Road. North Road is very crowded. Everyone said, already mentioned traffic there. So you're paying them $1.5 to $2 million for this little segment. it just financially just doesn't seem to make sense. You have enough to ride the rink already, which is great, but that extra little bit, I don't think it's worth it. That's what I have to say.
Thank you. Yes?
My name is Amy Varner. I'm a resident of Manchester. I'm very involved in this path, and this is not a path to nowhere. This will connect 2 schools. The children in Dorset, this is just the beginning. Dorset is waiting for Manchester to pass this and get started on it. And Rob Giotti has come. Unfortunately, he's out with his children, but he wanted to talk.
Dorset Town Manager.
Yes, the Dorset Town Manager. And this will connect to Dorset School, and he said from Dorset School it will connect, and he was hoping this will go to the green. They're talking now of paths from the green to Williams, to the quarry. It's a great historical path because at some point this is going to connect where the railroad originally went, from the quarry down to Manchester.
Thank you. Anyone else?
So
All right.
just
Yes.
two quick announcements. If anybody has written comments, I know a lot of people spoke today. Somebody's already called me and wants to submit written comments. If anybody has written comments, they can send it to me. I'll also post Dan's, actually your email address is on our website on the left-hand side.
Also right there.
It's part of the announcement, and you can see it there as well. Also, Cynthia Kilburn, we called her at lunch today and asked her to moderate this. So I think we do all of her a round of applause. She picked up the phone. It was your.
All right, thank you. So back in August.
I have some business cards on the table here. If you want my email address or my phone number, you can reach out to me. Answer any questions.